Awesome. Welcome, everybody. Looks like we got a few folks joining us. So welcome to our joint webinar with Sophos, Executech's webinar with Sophos, Awareness to Action. Looking forward to talking with everybody about this subject a little bit today. So we will wait for probably another 30 seconds for some folks to join, and then we will go ahead and get started. Hope everybody's having a really good Thursday. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, just want to introduce myself quickly. My name is Tyler Rasmussen. I'm the Vice President of Cybersecurity at Executech. Been with Executech for 5 years, and security is my passion, and it's what I do. So all things cybersecurity, and excited to be here with you guys today. We also have Chris Wanamaker with us from Sophos. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Chris.
Sure. Thanks, Tyler. Chris Wanamaker, channel account executive with Sophos. I help partners like Executech focus in on the cybersecurity and all the things that they need to do with their customers. And prior to joining Sophos, I was actually very much in the same seat as Tyler. I had my own MSP, and I worked very closely with my customers as well on their cybersecurity needs. So like Tyler, cybersecurity is very much a passion.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. All right, well, let's go ahead and jump into the topic here. So I'm sure you might have heard this for many years now, that cybersecurity is the new reality for SMBs. Well, that's because it has been for the past many years. The forefront and the frontier keeps getting pushed farther and farther in terms of what attackers are doing and how we are responding to that. And in many cases, trying to get ahead of that. So there was a study from Yahoo Finance, or a study that was reported by Yahoo Finance, and it was actually done by Viking Cloud, that cybersecurity is now the #1 threat to SMBs, surpassing some other concerns that are also very much top of mind for small and medium-sized business owners. So 75% of SMBs identify cyber incidents as their greatest operational risk. And up to this point, in the past year, 46% have faced AI-generated phishing attempts, which that will only continue to increase. This study was published in February, but now it's going to increase, and probably rapidly from here. And the reality of the situation is that AI has many great uses. So if you aren't using AI within your day-to-day work, then you probably know someone who is, and you probably might want to consider that in the future or in the near future. It makes you much more productive, or it can, but it also accelerates attackers and defenders on the other side of the coin. So there has been definitely a shift from will we be attacked, which back when I started with Executech, there were still a lot of folks that really were flying under the radar for the most part. Nowadays, it's not so much about will I be attacked. It's more about how do we do our best to prevent that and then respond effectively. It's not even a matter of when. It's probably already happened, or attempts have already been made. So that's really this is kind of the forefront of where we're at and the frontier of where we're at in terms of the cybersecurity landscape. Exciting times to be alive with cybersecurity and AI. So identity and access, that's really our first line of defense. So let me ask you guys this. How many of you have ever been annoyed at being forced to change your password? I know that's definitely something that has come across for me. My bank, or I'm trying to think of which which institution it was. I think it's one of my banks, forces me to still change my password every so often. And that's actually not the recommendation anymore from government organizations that make cybersecurity policy, or from Microsoft. The best thing to do is to have a long and secure password, and then to only change that upon suspicion of compromise. However, as humans, we don't do a great job of making secure passwords. That's just not our strong suit. Our human nature is to make things convenient. So have you ever, in creating passwords, reused a slight variation, or reused a password, or used a slight variation of your password across sites? If you're telling yourself no, then you might be a robot. So that's something that is definitely human nature. And so we all do that. And the best solution to that is really a password manager. So there's quite a few password managers out there. There are some that are better than others. I would recommend avoiding browser-based password managers like the Chrome password manager, or something that comes coupled with the browser. That doesn't mean you can't use a password manager that has a browser extension, but the ones that are actually built in, for example, Chrome or the Google password manager that's built right in, not usually the safest. So we at Executech offer a password manager called Keeper. It's secure by design. It only allows the passwords to be decrypted on your device, never in the cloud. And so it's a great way to remember just a single password. That's your master password, and have multi-factor authentication related to that, so that you can create long and unique passwords and easily use those across all of your devices. So if you're interested in that, let us know. We're happy to share more information about that, but password managers are critical. Multi-factor, everyone's heard about multi-factor. I don't think we need to belabor this, but unfortunately, we still struggle, as society at large still struggles with having multi-factor applied everywhere. So that's something that is really just a key line of defense. And that leads us into single sign-on with Microsoft Entra ID. So this is what we recommend. So the idea is that you set up strong authentication with strong multi-factor authentication in Microsoft Entra. And then from there, you tie all of your apps to that, so that when you go to authenticate against your cloud apps, whatever they are, your SaaS apps, whatever they are, you are redirected to Microsoft for authentication with that strong authentication. The advantage there is that you don't have to remember nearly as many passwords and juggle the MFA tokens. You take advantage of your strongest authentication, which is usually set there. And then in addition to that, those benefits, you often have monitoring. And if you're with Executech, you have monitoring of your Microsoft authentication and logins all the time, 24/7, 365, to look for attack patterns and account takeovers. So lots of benefits for doing that. And honestly, it makes things a lot more convenient for your life and your users. So lots of great benefits there. So maybe a call to action here is to consolidate your app logins behind Entra ID SSO, and then phase out standalone app logins, including to Sophos VPN and Sophos Central. So Chris, you want to talk a little bit about how Sophos integrates their products with SSO?
Yeah, absolutely. So the VPN will tie directly in, just like the other applications, into SSO. So instead of having to sign in to Microsoft and then having to sign into this application, that application, like you said, the SSO will bring that all together. So with the VPN, you can sign in once and then automatically be connected via VPN to the corporate network, enabling that extra layer of security.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that's a feature that came out last year, I believe, that we've begun to set up at our clients, and it makes things a lot easier, a lot nicer to manage as well, and leveraging that strong authentication. Mm-hmm. So, all right. Next, patch management. So why are we still talking about patch management in 2026? If you haven't heard about patch management, then I would question what what decade you're living in, right? Maybe back in the 80s. So I'm sure everyone is very familiar with patch management, and but a lot of attacks still occur because of missing patches. So really it becomes a speed problem. How fast can we patch things when we find out that there are vulnerabilities? How fast can the vendor get patches out? And then in addition to that, it's about your company's cyber hygiene. So we automate that at Executech. We utilize a tool called Ninja One for automated patch management. It does both operating systems and third-party apps. And so we would highly recommend a similar type of solution, moving from ad hoc manual patching to an automated policy-driven process, because there's no reason nowadays to have it be manual. It takes too long. Centralized, you really have to have it centrally managed in order to not think about that and focus on your business. And then Chris, what does Sophos Risk Management provide in terms of insight in this area?
Yeah, I think something that you said there, Tyler, is super important. It related to the patching. I mean, software is created by human beings, and no human being is infallible. And so there are going to be instances where, the software does have a vulnerability, and the attackers are often looking for a way to exploit it. So this is how I like to explain it is, when, look at your business like a house. And earlier when you talked about identity, so, usernames and passwords, that's your front door. And then the MFA becomes like a deadbolt or a smart lock on it. Well, the thing is when attackers go, they're going to look at your front door and go, okay, there's authentication on there, there's MFA on there. I'm going to try and find a secondary way to access this house, which is going to be through, windows, doggy doors, things like that. And the way that we translate that into the security aspect is all of the patches that aren't being done on software, that's a secondary access point. And with that, all of those vulnerabilities, what managed risk does in this case is it continually scans for those types of things. So it looks at, with Executech taking care of patch management for, the OS and for third party applications, we still have to look at things like IoT devices. We still have to look at things like printers. And so Sophos Managed Risk will go out and it will constantly scan all of those types of devices to go, hey, what might be opened up either accidentally or on purpose? It's looking for open ports. It's looking for exposed services, things that shouldn't be accessible to the web and are now accessible to the web. And it's going to scan both external and internal. So this is an additional way that, Sophos and Executech are scanning for things around your business environment to make sure that those windows and doggy doors and things like that are closed and locked and don't provide an additional point of entry into the network.
Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. And when does it do that type of scan?
So two different ways. You can do ad hoc, like as needed types of scans, or you can do, constant. So it's constantly going. Additionally, when new CVEs are released, this is a vulnerability that was discovered, in this software package or in this product. The managed risk system actually goes out and scans that automatically. So new CVE gets published. The system goes out, scans everything to see if any of the devices or software is affected by that CVE.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Chris. All right, so the human firewall, I'm sure you've heard of this term as well. The human firewall is really critical because humans are really the weakest link in security. Often there are technical holes that we are racing to fix and patch. However, we could do that all day long. And if a human gives up credentials or a human grants access erroneously, then all of that can be bypassed in a second. So we highly recommend the training that is required for users to mitigate this type of risk. So a lot of times, and in the past, we've kind of designed our training programs as an industry around annual trainings, and that's okay. But what actually has been proven to work better is more short, frequent trainings instead of kind of once a year, check the box type of thing. And that includes simulated phishing campaigns and just, again, short little oftentimes computer-based trainings work really well. And that's something that we do here at Executech. So in addition to that, validation. So validation habits are critical. You can kind of see over here in the action pane. In addition to implementing ongoing security awareness program with monthly phishing simulations and ongoing training, one of the things that we mentioned here is doing an outbound contact to a known good number or a contact method. Instead of relying on someone having contacted you and telling you a story, or like your payment details need to change, or hey, this is your loved one. I'm in serious danger. Send this money now. That type of thing, because those things, unfortunately, nowadays can be faked, can be spoofed. So hanging up the phone and calling to a known good number is critical in that type of a scenario. And unfortunately, we see in the news those types of scams happen all the time now, and it's not a good place to be in, and it's an unfortunate situation that we're in, and an unfortunate byproduct of the frontier of cybersecurity and AI that we live in today. So in addition to those items, we really need to think about limiting what we share online and being careful with it. Most of us, I'm not going to say all of us, I don't know everybody on the call, but most of us are in social media in some form or fashion. Just being careful about what you share, as well as what you say can really be important for us, especially with AI today being able to harvest and analyze anything that you've posted publicly. And build a profile on you. And that's not to make anybody nervous or scared. It's just the reality of the times that we live in. So that's something just to keep in mind as you go about your day to day. From a device perspective, we can help augment the human firewall by enforcing encryption, screen locks, automated updates, etc., and using MDM to enforce security, and even BYOD for bring your own device security. So an important and kind of interesting note on this, there were in the past couple days, and yesterday in particular, Reddit was blowing up about something that occurred where an attacker for several organizations was able to remotely wipe users' device that were enrolled in MDM. And people lost personal data. Well, here at Executech, we have a method of enrolling your device in MDM in such a way that your personal data cannot be accessed, cannot be wiped, but still gives you the benefits of being able to push out work apps, etc., to users' phones and positively identify those phones so that you can make sure that it's that person's phone that's connecting and not another foreign device, an attacker. So if you're interested in that, feel free to ask us about that. But it's definitely something that not a lot of people are aware of, that type of an enrollment where your personal data is able to be protected and not even able to be wiped. That type of enrollment is available. So updating your acceptable use policy and social media policy is important as well, just so users are aware of what can and can't be done, and should not be done. Chris, can you talk to us a little bit more about, on the topic of AI? This is obviously a hot topic all the time, but tell us a little bit more about how it's kind of a double-edged sword, and just kind of expound on that if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a class that I had done, or a speech that I had done at Right of Boom back in February, which is a conference for a lot of MSPs. And, one of the things that we really want to talk about was AI being a double-edged sword. And so you have a lot of good things about it, there's a lot of bad things about it too. And so we really kind of wanted to cover, what this looks like in, different environments. So I always like to start with how are the bad guys using it, and what we're seeing, and to your point previously, AI is being used for deep fake voice, deep fake video. I have a number of situations where that's happened, and the images that you post online can quickly be turned into a video of you saying or doing something that you didn't actually do. And those are being used, to trick people into doing things. So AI is being used to generate phishing emails that mimic that internal style. So the same type of language. I mean, previously, when the bad guys were, formulating the email, there was horrible misspellings. The grammar wasn't good. But now with AI, you can feed that in and get an email like it would sound like it would be from me or from Tyler, from the CEO of the organization, in their own wording, and it's not. The deepfake voice and video, is being used for the business email. The one that we've seen quite often is you get an email from the CEO that says, "Hey, can you go down to the store, buy a bunch of gift cards, scratch off the tag on the back, put it in an Excel file," and that's how they get the money. Well, people have become accustomed to that, and they know not to do that now, but the bad guys are taking that one step further, and they're taking those images online. They're taking the information that you're posting on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram and everything else, and they're using that to build a digital persona that they can use in a video call, with you to make you believe that it's actually them talking. And so you have to be very careful, about a lot of this now, and work towards using a password type of system, where it's like, hey, tell me the secret password before I go and do this, or actually going into their office and going face to face. More importantly, AI is speeding up what we can all do, including what the bad guys do in terms of, automating reconnaissance and initial access. They can type in, give me all the information about you or about your organization. They can start to scan once they have that information. They can start to scan for openings. And additionally, they're using it. The CVEs that we're talking about. Once they take the text around a CVE and what it's exploiting, they can put that into an LLM, a large language model, and better understand how to exploit it very quickly. So they don't have to spend the amount of time that they did previously to go and figure out how this works and everything else. They just put it into AI and go, okay, here's what I need to do. They're building malware variants now that can generate their own code, or it can behave in such a way that they can evade signature-based detection. And this is where things like behavior become so vitally important. For example, Notepad on your computer should never be trying to reach out to a web page on the internet. That is not typical behavior for Notepad. And it's you want to look for things like that. They live off the land. They use live off the land techniques, which are enhanced by AI to blend into normal activity. So they see what is normal for you, and then they're utilizing that behavior to move throughout the network, and virtually, be undetectable. So there's also dark AI ecosystems as well. So, we have AI like ChatGPT and Claude and Lovable and, all these other ones, that we like to use for good things and to help us with our, businesses and things like that. They're doing the same thing on their side using the dark LLMs as, crimeware. They're using that to do their work a lot faster. So for everything that we have on our side to help us do business better, they're doing the same thing, because the ransomware and the crypto and the malware game now is just as much of a business as anything else, and they're treating it as such with the applications. Some of the other things that we have to worry about is not only just the bad guys, but even the people within your own organization. Again, everybody wants to utilize ChatGPT and Copilot and Claude and all these other things to help do the work that they need to do faster and more efficiently. But we have to look at the risks associated with the lack of guardrails and safeguards and education on AI. There's stories that I've been told from other MSPs where they said, yeah, I had a client who this was a dentist actually, they wanted to better understand how their patient could be supported. And so they took and uploaded the patient's information into ChatGPT to go, hey, give me an analysis of this. That's an immediate violation of HIPAA because you've posted personal information into an LLM that is using that information to train and grow and answer other people's questions. And so when they're pasting PII and credentials or contracts, things like that, you're feeding that information to the rest of the world. And stuff like that can violate privacy, can violate contracts and compliance requirements. So there's risk there from, internal staff just not being educated or not having the guardrails around it. Employees can be using those unsanctioned AI tools without IT's knowledge. So if they're going to chat GPT because they've been allowed to go there, how are you tracking what's going into that system? Because there's no logging, there's no data residency guarantees, there's no security review. They're just copying and pasting and, it's going into that platform. So there's a lot of things there that cause compliance and governance gaps. So going back to that example of the dentist's office, that's an immediate HIPAA violation. If you're posting, if you're trying to organize credit card information, you post that in there, that's a PCI violation. So there's a lot of things that can happen just due to lack of education, but also lack of proper guardrails as well. And then on top of that, there's a lack of clear ownership and accountability around those AI related decisions. Internally from a management structure as well, who's responsible for the AI? How do we handle this? What do we know and what don't we know? And that's the biggest part, is because AI is growing exponentially every day. We're hearing about it more and more and more. Who within the organization has the time to be able to do that? And that's where Tyler and Executech come in to do that. They can provide that information for you. And then, something else that you have to worry about too is not only internally, but the vendors that you work with. There's something called slop squatting. So this is something that can happen in your supply chain. And so what happens in this case is, and I don't know how familiar everybody is with AI, but there's something called hallucination. And what that means is you ask AI to do something and then it just makes it up. It will make up its own source. It'll make up a document. I've seen instances of it where a doctor was trying to gather information on a study around a specific ailment, and AI made up a trial, a drug trial that was going on, and the results from it. Like, it did not exist. There was no such thing. And so AI is making up this information, but it's also making up names for package or library. So, bits of coding that your supply chain, your vendors, your SaaS vendors are incorporating into their products. So now when it goes out to reference that information, it doesn't exist. So then what happens is the attackers then register those names and then distribute malicious code. So the supply chain, the SaaS provider says, hey, this is a valid library here, and it's really not. And that's how things can get injected into the applications that you use every day. So how to stay safe, when it comes to AI, some practical governance around it. So first, you want to establish an AI usage policy. I think this goes, along the lines of your acceptable use policy for computer systems. It goes along the lines with an acceptable social media policy. You have to have an acceptable AI use policy. Define which tools are approved and how. Specify what data is never allowed in the prompts. And I think that is so vitally important, because you can inadvertently take something that is a trade secret within your business, your secret recipe, and expose it to everybody using that AI model. And then you want to have somebody who clearly owns, the AI related decisions and the risks associated with that. You want to look at your vendors. You want to understand, what they're utilizing AI for and how they're utilizing it. So you want to ask them, how they secure their models and train their data, and what their AI-driven features look like, because you want to ensure that they align with your compliance needs and there's clear documentation around it. Going along with the usage policy, you want to make sure you train the teams too. You want to educate. That is, I think, the biggest thing that helps reduce the risk of breaches and events happening. You want to train your team on what responsible AI use looks like. You want to cover the risks, like data usage or data leakage, bias, hallucinations. I mean, I see that quite a bit. They have to be able to understand the difference between, well, hey, this is fact based on sources that I can follow, or hey, AI just made this up. You also want to teach them how to recognize AI generated scams, and it's not easy. I will be very candid. The bad guys are getting better and better, and the AI models are getting better and better. So the deep fakes are hard to tell apart sometimes, especially if you don't know what to look for. I'll give a secret away. If you're on Instagram or you're on TikTok, there's a lot of AI generated content on there, and it looks like me. It looks like I'm the one speaking. It looks like a human being, but that person actually does not exist. You want to look at certain features like, how does the hair move? How do their lips move? How do their eyes move? Those are ways that you can tell if the content there is generated by AI. And so there's ways to tell that, and the synthesized voices as well. So training your team to be able to recognize those things is very important. And then lastly, you want to take and monitor and audit that AI tool usage. So again, identify what tools are being used, and then enforce the blocks or enforce the controls to block, the risky tools, only allow the vetted ones, but make sure there is logging. Make sure that you have a way to see what is being done. You can utilize AI models that are closed off from the greater public, so it's only within your organization. So things like that, you want to make sure you put a lot of time and attention towards. On Executech's role, Tyler, did you want to talk a little bit more about kind of the AI governance from Executech side?
Yeah, so that's something that we can help out with, definitely, in terms of helping you establish a governance policy for your organization. In fact, this came up recently with one of our customers, especially with the I would say the acceleration of the capabilities with different AI models, large language models. And I think the most popular one out there right now, at least, is Anthropic's Claude. There's a lot of organizations adopting that. However, it's just like getting into a car without your headlights or your seatbelt or even sometimes a steering wheel. To be honest with you, if you just connect it and hope for the best, then I mean, once your data's gone from your repositories and out connecting to a different data set or a different repository that AI is pulling it into, then it's gone. It's essentially gone from you. And so you got to be very, very careful with that, and utilize tools that are proven to be to keep your data safe and private, and not train the models. So very, very important from that perspective. So and then the other thing that we can do is recommend some technical controls, such as what you mentioned, blocking AI that's not in use. Now, the idea is really about protection, and it's not about being a no person and saying no all the time, but it's really about just keeping your organization's data safe, and your users safe. So we're more than happy to help consult on that as well. From a defense perspective, we absolutely should be utilizing tools that utilize AI to detect bad behavior and abnormal behavior, as well as utilizing AI to assist in investigations, just like it can make everything else faster. Really, the time to react to a potential incident it's even more important than ever to shrink that. And so using AI in assisting incident response is critical. And just really to kind of summarize it, the outcome focus here is that the goal is fewer high confidence alerts and faster and more consistent decisions from a security perspective. So, one of the things that really helps us at Executech with that is the AI capabilities that are built into Sophos MDR. And so, Chris, can you talk to us a little bit more about that and help everyone on the call understand how you guys are using AI and how that really benefits the companies that you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. I sit here and I paint a picture of how bad AI can be and all the things that you have to worry about. But from a security company, we understand those risks. We understand the power that AI has on both sides. And the way that we utilize AI is because we use it in such a way to help our teams. It is a tool. So we are not using AI as a replacement for human beings. Our SOC is staffed 24/7 with a large number. I think we're closer to 1,000 individuals in our SOC team now, who utilize AI to sort through the information coming in much faster. So to some of the other points that you made on the previous slide, it's being able to get some context around the information that's there. We're looking at information coming in from firewalls and from endpoint and from email and from all these different systems, and we're able to correlate that data into a single event. Here is what's going on. And so our team is utilizing that AI to look at all of that information much faster, so they can use the AI that the bad guys are using to try and break into networks. We're using AI on the other side to go, hey, we see you, we see what you're trying to do, we can respond to it much faster. We have automated playbooks and things like that can automatically lock things down, but there's always that human element to it as well. It's a human being looking at what's going on, because they're the ones that need to interpret the information. The AI will go and provide context, but the expert, the team there, will look at the information and then make additional or take additional steps from there. So the thing that we want to make sure that we're minimizing is the business impact, because even just a single incident can be financially and reputationally devastating for an MSP. So having this team behind who can react very quickly, can utilize AI to move that much faster, becomes it provides businesses with that peace of mind. So that's a big focus of the MDR team. We are providing constant monitoring and threat hunting. So there are situations where something behaves kind of weird on a network, and our team will go in and go, hey, what are we seeing here? Let's make sure that this is a false positive, and provide the information around it as well, to say, hey, we have with high level of confidence that this is something benign. This is not something that we have to worry about. But it's also, the team is there to provide that threat hunting, because the hands-on keyboard attacks, this is not, this is where they're taking over credentials. This is where they're taking over the systems and then moving throughout the network. Our team can look at that and say, hey, this is something we see what's going on. We're going to go ahead and shut that down. The big part of AI on our side is just filtering out that noise too. Again, so many different things coming in. So it's like, what do we need to pay attention to? What's behavioral? The context aware detections that I was talking about. So again, user, device, and geography. We see this all the time. Impossible travel. Tyler, how can you be, at your desk right now and in Germany in 2 minutes? I mean, I don't know about you, but that's an amazing flight, and I'd love to, figure out how to do that, because it cuts down on jet lag quite a bit. But
coming soon, right?
I know you're hiding the teleportation machine over there, but that's impossible travel. There's no way that Tyler could get from where he's at to Germany or any place else in the world, within just a few moments. And so we're looking at things like like that going, oh, hold on, that's not correct. We need to take some actions on that. More
Yeah,
importantly, yeah.
let me make just one point here that I want to just highlight one point that you made, Chris, is we've worked with other MDR providers as well. And just candidly speaking, Sophos does the best job that we have seen at giving you actionable results without the noise. Um, other providers, I experienced it with last week where there was alerts that are like, yeah, this is happening, but we don't care about this because of XYZ. And it just seems like Sophos does a fantastic job at being able to utilize AI, I'm sure, to provide the context to make decisions and then alert when it's really something that you need to pay attention to. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to throw that out there as my experience.
Yeah, yeah, and that's great, and that's so very true too. It's sometimes you can be handed an entire checklist, and you got to figure out what to do with it. I equate it to this, Tyler. I go, do you want to work with an MDR service that's like a fire department where your house is on fire and the fire department shows up, and hands you a checklist that says, hey, in order to put out that fire, step 1, grab a bucket. Step 2, fill it with water. Step 3, spray the water or push the water onto the fire. If fire still exists, go to step 4 and repeat again. Or do you want an MDR provider who's going to show up, put out the fire, go in and say, hey, here's where it started, this is what happened, this is how you can prevent it next time, and all those sorts of things. And I think that's one of the biggest differentiators with what we do and how we do it, along with our response models too. We have a notify only, so we can just do that. Hey, we're just going to alert you, and you can do what you need to. We can work collaboratively, with the team to go through, or we can do full service, meaning we are that fire department that'll show up, put out the fire, and provide you the full report later on. So we have different ways that we can work with our partners and with their customers to make sure that they have the amount of control over the response as possible, which I think is very important. When an incident does happen, the first thing that our team will work to contain it. So they're gonna, isolate any of the endpoints, because what you want to do is you want to make sure you have northwest travel, so that's from outside to inside, but then you have what's known as east-west travel, and that's within a network. So if they're on a compromised machine over here, well, they can just jump over to this machine here, or this machine over here. Well, what we need to do is contain this so that they can't jump from machine to machine. That includes killing any malicious processes, moving any malicious artifacts, things like that, blocking IPs, domains, and URLs at the network edge. We see that often. Again, this is why our endpoint and our firewall and our email all talk to each other, because if there's something going on the endpoint and it's trying to communicate out to the internet, the firewall shuts it down and says, no, you can't do that. You can't talk to this command and control server out there that's trying to take over. And what's nice is that it was only on that one endpoint, but it communicated with the firewall and it shut it down for everybody in the organization. So, and that happens all in, real time. We provide the investigation and the RCA, the root cause analysis, so we're going to build that timeline. How did they get in? How did they move? What did they access? What are all the things that they touched within that network? That way we have a much clearer picture of what's going on, but more importantly, we can identify any gaps in controls where defenses worked or failed. Again, the same thing, Tyler, like you said earlier, if somebody clicks on an email that takes them to a Microsoft page, or it looks like a Microsoft page, and puts in, their email address and their password, they effectively handed the attacker the information. Well, we can understand that. We can go, hey, well, this person here clicked on this, which was a phishing link, and they entered their credentials, and this is how they got in. And so now there's some education that can happen around that. There's some additional controls that you can put in place. But the big piece here is the cross-customer intelligence. Sophos has thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of customers all across the globe. And so what we do, we have Sophos labs. And so when something happens over here, that information is fed to the rest of the customers across the world. So we can take, threat intelligence from a few thousand and deliver it to millions. And so now when we see something pop up, we can take those indicators and we can push them, across all of the environments and make sure that everybody is protected. So there's this vast, hive mindset, if you will, of like, hey, this is what's going on here. We need to make sure everybody is protected. And then, when it comes to AI specific, incident, we're looking for any compromised AI agents or integrations. So any malicious use of, chatbots or plugins, agents with access to internal systems. Again, that behavior, are they doing things that they're not supposed to be? Are they searching for information that they typically wouldn't have access to? Looking at tampered data feeds, within the AI systems, leading to any bad decisions or reporting, again, leading to additional, hallucinations and things like that. Any IP or model theft, proprietary data, that's being accessed and distributed. And then recovery and resilience as well. So, using, use tested backups to restore that system data, and then, apply any lessons learned to harden the controls and refine, any of the AI governance there.
Yeah, and these are kind of more recent specific or incident response scenarios that come up with the use of AI, right? And so we see these things that can occur, and just this is more of an awareness slide. Make sure that you're aware of these types of incidents. But at Executech, we couple our incident response, our very well defined incident response plan and playbooks. They work hand in hand with Sophos MDR in order to move at speed and scale to protect our customers. And that's what you want really out of a service provider, whomever it is. So we've talked about a lot of different things, and we've covered a lot of different topics focused heavily on obviously cybersecurity and AI. But kind of what's the takeaway here? And so we've provided a 30, 60, 90-day action plan to if you're at zero, if you're watching this and you're at zero, what do I do from here, right? And most of you are probably not at zero, but these are still great actions to confirm and ensure that you are taking. So around identity and access, in terms of deploying a password manager. If you haven't yet, would highly recommend you do that. That's it's gonna make things a lot more secure and make your life a lot easier as well. There is, a little bit of a learning curve, but it's more than worth it to take the time to learn how to use those tools effectively across your devices. Turning on phishing resistant MFA for Microsoft 365. So making sure that the methods you're using are providing application context, geography context, so that when you get a notification that a number pops up that, hey, I need to input this number from Microsoft Authenticator into my computer, you can also see, where is this coming from? What's prompting this? Was this me that really did this, or is this something else? And then engaging with Executech to begin to set up SSO for all of your critical applications behind Entra ID, so that you can leverage that phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication. And then patching and device hygiene, implementing NinjaOne or another tool that will do the automated patch management, and establishing a baseline configuration for your endpoints and your servers, so that you can kind of augment the human firewall. And then speaking of the human firewall, from an awareness and AI use standpoint, launching or updating your security awareness training with an emphasis on AI enhanced or AI focused phishing and scams. So in addition to that, drafting an initial AI usage policy, what's allowed, what's prohibited. That's something that everyone should be doing. If you haven't done that, please consider doing that, because it's almost certain that people within your organization are utilizing AI chatbots, whether they're sanctioned or not. At the very least, those chatbots, and maybe even building agents with your data. So, and that's not to scare you, just to help you understand the reality. kind of the next step from there is MDR and visibility, making sure that you are getting insight into all of your interconnected systems and environment, and making sure that you have a team that can respond at speed and scale. And then once you have kind of established an AI usage policy, just in kind of improving your governance, inventorying your tools, and determining what is actually being used in practice, and starting to enforce your usage policy. And then testing and training. So maybe running your first phishing simulation that includes AI generated content to see how your users respond. And I was actually on a call today with a client that they were like, "Is this real, or is this something and something else?" And it was funny. And this particular client was utilizing a module that they were implementing themselves, and it's got to a point where they weren't even sure what was a test or what was not, which is pretty interesting. And then from there, you can start to harden and standardize and further lock down devices and your application configurations based on lessons learned, and then tighten your access controls. Really start to move to very strong authentication. What we like to do is actually called device-based access. So not only password and multi-factor authentication, but kind of the highest level of maturity from that we help you guys or we help our customers enforce is device-based access. So you have to come from not only those things, but also from a known device. And that includes mobile devices. So, and then drill and refine. So run a more advanced tabletop exercise, including AI-specific attack scenarios, and then refine your incident response plan. And then I skipped over the middle section, which is enforcing, again, doing some additional enforcing and monitoring of AI usage and the AI usage policy, and then setting up a quarterly AI risk review cadence with us, and helping us help you to govern your AI appropriately and smartly. So, why AI governance matters for SMBs? It's there. It's in use right now. The cat's out of the bag, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you're looking at it at that moment in time. So we know kind of what things can happen. There's some bad that comes with it. There's also a lot of good things that can come with it. So the important thing is make sure you are taking a proactive approach to governing it. Otherwise, it'll become your master rather than the other way around. And then from our perspective, what we like to do is create policies and standards that are practical, and then align those with existing security and compliance frameworks that you already follow. We can help you implement the technical controls, people and process to deliver training, and then help you with continued risk management, because AI tools are always changing, right? There's a lot more that AI can do now than it could do 6 months ago. If you're familiar with OpenClaw, and you know the previous iterations of that, it actually got bought by OpenAI, and now you have Claude Cowork and Perplexity Computer, all of those different types of things that you can do a lot more very quickly with AI. And then a continuous risk management. That's going to be key going forward. So as kind of to summarize, AI is changing how attacks happen, and the question is, are we prepared? And we want to help you. We want to help you get there. So we would love to offer everyone an opportunity to do a Sophos phish threat, a self-guided Sophos phish threat trial, and as well as perform a security AI governance assessment with you. So if that's something you're interested in, the QR code is there, and we would love to be able to help you out with that. So, Chris, any kind of final thoughts?
You know, I think you really hit the nail on the head, in just that AI can do so much. And you know how far it's come just in the last 6 months. I mean, if you go back, you know, to when ChatGPT was originally launched, you know, just a few years ago, um, it was clunky. It was not the best. It helped do some things, but it's been refined, and then you have, Claude, you have, Copilot, you have, all these different models now coming out, and they're getting better. The quality of the video that you could create using AI was horrendous previously, and now it's almost indistinguishable from a real human in a real situation. And so you have to be very mindful of AI's use, both good and bad. And you want to make sure that the way that you're using it within your organization adheres to a very strict set of rules and policies, so that you're not uploading, dental records into ChatGPT and exposing that information, sort of thing. You want your staff, you want your people, your vendors, you want everybody to understand, that AI is important in doing business, but not used the right way, without the guardrails, without having those policies in place, it can become a very dangerous thing. And so you want to have the security around it. You want to have the policies around it. You want to have a partner who understands how to go about managing and protecting you, from AI and with AI. So yeah, no, I think that's the big piece there, Tyler, and this is great.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I really appreciate it. Thanks for your thoughts and your insights. It's refreshing to as probably most of you, I spend time every day with AI, and it's funny how refreshing it is just to have a human experience, even though I'm looking at you through a through a screen. It's still, there's something definitely refreshing about it, right? So
Yeah.
love it, and thanks for the opportunity, guys, for us to everyone, for us to be with you today, and for being with us, and appreciate your attendance, and hope you found it helpful, and have a great rest of your day.